2011 EPA, hi Charleston, 2011 EPA approved the use of PFAS chemicals in the fracking industry. And so if you've never heard of PFAS, it's this category of chemicals, also known as forever chemicals. There are thousands that have been produced historically and are being produced and are in the environment across the entire world. And so these chemicals were used in firefighting foam, Teflon, and then even some consumer products like Scotch Guard, water repellent clothing like Gore-Tex, and then stain resistant products or things of that nature. So anything that really repels water and other liquids and things of that sort. And so certain PFAS are no longer being produced. They've been phased out because of their toxicity and potential to cause cancer in humans. So even though some have been phased out, a lot are still impacting the environment in really, really negative ways. And so that's kind of the background and setting the stage for the relationship between PFAS and fracking and EPA's kind of approval of this contaminant. So just for a little bit of context on fracking, if you don't know what it is, hydraulic fracturing or fracking is a type of oil shale and natural gas extraction where water and chemicals and sand are pumped into the ground horizontally to kind of push out any trapped oil and gas. And so when you're kind of just looking at a fracking rig, it's usually like this tall steel structure, and you might think, okay, that's it, it's just covering that one area, but horizontally, the pipes and the like holes that are used to push out the trapped oil and gas can go for 4 miles in each direction. So you're covering a large area of space with just one fracking rig. And the reason that that is significant is because the contamination is so much more widespread than just in that one area because of that very reason, because it's stretching 8 miles. And it's a lot of area for a fracking company to kind of keep track of and look after, and a lot of it goes unchecked. And so, yeah, that kind of gets us into the reason why this is allowed and why this kind of concoction of chemicals is allowed in fracking practices, and that's just really because fracking is one of, if not the least regulated energy industries in the U.S. And so fracking is exempt from a lot of the same regulations and reporting requirements that other industries are held to. And so this is kind of the reason that we're here, and the reason that fracking has such lax regulations really has to do with this phenomenon called the Halliburton Loophole. So Vice President Dick Cheney, he called to Congress to make sure that the fracking industry was going to be protected, that the fracking industry could continue to grow, and that there wouldn't be all of these government loopholes that they would have to jump through. And so essentially, Vice President Cheney, his goal, his mission, came to fruition. Congress decided, okay, yeah, we can protect fracking. We can make sure that the fracking industry can continue this production. And so, yeah, Congress passed this law that exempted fracking from the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is really troublesome. And the irony of all of this is that Vice President Cheney was the CEO of one of the largest fracking companies in the U.S. called Halliburton. He was the CEO before becoming vice president. So this really rattled people in Washington, and they didn't really understand how this was legal and XYZ, but the Halliburton loophole still exists. Fracking is exempt from the Safe Drinking Water Act. And so they are not required to report unless you have states that are taking initiative and requiring reporting or stricter regulations as to what these injection liquids can be. So that's kind of why we're here. And so bringing it back to the EPA approving this, there are quite literally thousands of chemicals that are used in the fracking process. And each has a different job, a very important job that is the reason that fracking is such a successful industry. And so these chemicals range from acids, which are used to, break down minerals and kind of clear the way for this oil and natural gas to proceed out. And then there are things like corrosion inhibitors, which are used to make sure that the steel isn't being damaged as the oil and natural gas is also being pumped out. So, corrosion inhibitors, acids, those are also really bad chemicals. So what makes PFAS different? Like why is it such a big deal that EPA approved PFAS? And there are two really major reasons why this is so problematic. And the first is that PFAS are extremely persistent in the environment and they don't break down. So they can travel through soil and water for miles and miles without breaking down, without, becoming just part of the water or part of the ground. Like they actually travel. And the second is that scientists knew that PFAS were dangerous and potentially could cause cancer before approving them in 2011. So, the phase out actually started in 2005 of PFAS chemicals. So industries recognized that these contaminants could be dangerous and they started phasing them out. But then 6 years later, EPA goes ahead and approves these chemicals to be used in fracking. And so that's really dangerous because I think we've all seen the videos of people lighting their tap water on fire when they live near fracking areas. And those videos haven't really stopped. So if things that can easily be lit on fire are in tap water, that means that, those PFAS chemicals that can travel for miles and miles are also in tap water or well water, whatever the water source is, PFAS could be certainly present. So with all of that, the fracking industry they couldn't resist. And it's just because PFAS really are so effective. And that's kind of that's the catch-22 with this category of contaminants, is because they really did offer and still do offer an important role in safety in the U.S., like the firefighting foam aspect. It's really important that we have an effective firefighting foam for the safety of everyone. And, Gore-Tex, the water repellent fabric, if you are a researcher in an area where there's a lot of precipitation, and you're trying to protect field equipment or whatever it is, these chemicals certainly worked. There's no denying that. And so in the oil and natural gas industry, they are extremely hydrophobic. So that means that they were used to help separate the oil and gas from these other properties. And so that made extreme financial sense for these industries because it's just one less thing that they have to do when refining the oil and natural gas. So it was an extreme cost saving measure for them, and it was really, really effective, or still is really effective. So yeah, I mean, that I'll sum everything up here. But I guess it's just important to kind of drive home that, PFAS are unregulated, and that means that they're not recognized as a contaminant that needs to be removed from drinking water. And yes, we're just talking about fracking and the presence of PFAS in fracking liquids. But PFAS have been detected in over 200 million people's drinking water. So this contaminant is certainly persistent, it's certainly widespread, and there are many different sources of contamination or pollution. It can be directly from a factory, it can be from fracking liquids, it can be from firefighting foam. There are so many different ways that PFAS can get into our water. And once they're in our water, there's really no feasible way to remove it at the municipal level. And that is the crux of this issue, is that, yes, it's effective in all these different ways, but we know that it causes cancer, and there's still really no way to remove it at the municipal level, so at a treatment plant level. So I'll leave you all with that. But I really wanted to talk about this story because, sometimes our agencies that protect human health and the environment, sometimes they get it wrong. And so it's really important to advocate for more stringent regulations and protections on keeping yourself and your family safe. So yeah, I hope that everyone learned something about fracking and PFAS. And as always, you can ask us questions on Instagram. You can DM us. You can also email hello@hydroviv.com or chat us at hydroviv.com. And our team of water nerds would be happy to answer any questions you might have about this topic or anything else. We love answering these types of questions, so feel free to chat us. But I hope everyone has a great Wednesday, great rest of the week, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you. Bye.